Now, as the government's plan for the year ahead is due to be unveiled in the King's speech at the state opening of Parliament today, Labour says the Conservatives can't fix the country because they've already failed. The party's Sir Keir Starmer says Labour offers a dynamic, mission-driven government that will get Britain building and turbocharge renewal in every community.
Well, joining us now to elaborate on Labour's ambitious plans to give Britain its future back, Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, Pat McFadden, joins us. I think you're live on College Green there, Pat. Good morning to you. So what would Labour set out that the Tories aren't doing today in the King's speech?
Well, we set out most of it at our party conference recently. The top 4 or 5 things would be 700,000 more dental appointments in the areas of greatest need, a key issue for many of your viewers who can't get a dental appointment. 2 million more NHS procedures to get the waiting lists and the waiting times down. We've got an ambitious house building programme where we want to see 1.5 million homes built over the course of the next Parliament. We want to crack down on crime and antisocial behaviour. We've got a 5-point plan on that, including banning known troublemakers from town centres, changing the law to protect shop workers who are attacked during shoplifting incidents. And that comes on top of commitments to set up a new company called GB Energy to help with the country's transition to cleaner energy, and a better deal for people at work with the banning of 0 hours contracts and an end to this fire and rehire practice that has seen the downgrading of working conditions. So we've got ambitions for change for the country. The Prime Minister has said the country needs change, but it's not going to get it if the King's speech turns out anything like the newspaper trails of it from the Conservative Party. It's only going to get it with a new Labour government.
And Pat, Sir Keir Starmer said in his speech, Britain's crying out for the long-term change that harnesses various different things. Why, for you, is Keir Starmer the long-term change that Britain's crying out for, considering the fact that the gap between the Tory party and the Labour Party is closing in now more than it ever has done before?
I don't accept that, this notion that the parties are in the same place. People always say that. I mean, I've just set out a comprehensive list of policies that we're advocating, none of which are being advocated by the Conservative Party. So there's a difference on offer. But the reason we emphasise long-term is because we know that if we are fortunate enough to be elected at the next election, we're going to inherit a difficult economic situation. And we don't want to overpromise to people. We don't want to tell people that we can solve every problem the country's facing overnight, because that won't be the case, and they wouldn't believe us if we did. So it's important to set out that these are first steps on a long-term programme of change, and ultimately the success of that depends on better economic growth, generating the wealth that we need to make people better off and pay for our public services. So alongside those immediate steps that I set out for you a minute or two ago, you need long-term ambition too, and everything needs to be set upon this foundation of financial and economic stability.
I mean, just
because if we take risks like that, the way the Tory party did, we know how that ended up, and we don't want to repeat that.
Argues, Pat, that he inherited a financial difficult situation, of course. I mean, in terms of, you mentioned differences between the parties, 700,000 more dentist appointments. Where are you going to get the dentists from? Shortening the waiting list, where are you going to get the doctors from? And the house building project, 1.5 million, is exactly the same as the current target for the current government.
Well, let me go through some of that. The current government abandoned their targets in the face of backbench pressure, so they can't deliver them, and they're not prepared to face up to the changes needed to really make house building like that a reality. And in terms of the NHS staffing issues that you raised, we've got to train the doctors and nurses. You've got to pay extra for people to do it as well. We've said we'd fund that through the abolition of non-dom tax status, which could raise some £3 billion or more a year, money that could go to the NHS to pay for these extra procedures, to reduce waiting lists, reduce waiting times, and address one of the critical challenges facing the country. This is the kind of ambition that you need if you want to turn the page on the Tory years. The Prime Minister's actually set the bar. He said it's time for a change. But then he said the answer to the call for change was 5 more years of the people who'd messed things up in the first place. I believe that today's King's speech, today's legislative programme is going to serve one purpose and one purpose only, which is to show that the Tories are going to fail their own test of showing enough change to meet the challenge the Prime Minister himself set out. I think he's going to fail his own test today.
Pat, just to move things onto a different topic now, Keir Starmer has refused to back calls for a ceasefire, despite the fact that polling shows the overwhelming majority of British citizens would support a ceasefire. Can you really say that Sir Keir Starmer is a man who represents the people?
I think he's setting out a comprehensive position on what is a very difficult issue. And when we talk about ceasefire, of course we understand why people want to just make this stop. You have to remember the Hamas side of this. Their spokesperson, Mr. Ghazi Hamad, said in an interview last week that not only was he happy with what had been done on the 7th of October, but that they would do it a second time, a third time, a fourth time. In the face of that, Israel has to go after Hamas, and the Palestinian civilians are getting caught up in this in the most awful way. So I think we have to be more ambitious than just saying have a ceasefire. You've got to have a changed future for the Palestinians, and you've got to have more security for Israel. So it might be a simple thing for him to call for, but actually in the speech that he made on this issue last week, he set out bigger, longer-term ambitions, because you can't allow Hamas to just say we'll do it a second time, a third time and a fourth time as they have done. Israel has to guarantee its security, and we have to have a better future for the Palestinians, and that's going to take real leadership, and I think he showed good leadership when he made that speech last week.
And just a final question, Pat. A word, if you would, on those planned protests this weekend, pro-Palestinian protesters on the same weekend as Armistice Day. What do you make of that? What's Labour's position?
Well, I think, Remembrance Sunday and Armistice Day, these are moments, perhaps more than any other moment in the calendar, when the country comes together and all the politics is left aside. I'll be in Bilston, in my own constituency in the West Midlands, and I can tell you we'll have a big community turnout. We always do, and I don't want anything to interfere with that. So when it comes to demonstrations, I hope they're nowhere near any Remembrance Day celebrations, and if they're not near, then the Home Secretary and the police have to make their usual judgments about the safety and the nature of a demonstration.
Pat McFadden, thank you.